Welcome to Podcast 360, powered by the Podcast Academy. In 3 questions, answered in 60 seconds each, you'll experience a 360-degree view of podcasting and the people who are building out the industry. Company founders will take turns sitting in the seat of both guest and host, creating a chain of podcast knowledge and perspective. These conversations are going to get down to business quickly. Each host will ask their guest 3 questions, and they will have 60 seconds to answer each one. You'll hear the timer counting down their final 15 seconds. At the end, the guest will choose a topic to revisit and dig into a little deeper. Let's meet our experts. Today's host is...
Hi, I'm Martina Castro, founder and CEO of Adonde Media. In case you missed my episode last week, I was interviewed by Jenna Weiss-Berman, co-founder of Pineapple Street. So give that a listen if you haven't already.
And who's in the hot seat as today's guest?
My seat is very hot, and my name is Eric Nuzum. I'm the co-founder of Magnificent Noise, which is a consulting and production company based in New York City.
Before we dig in, we ask our guests to lay out 2 truths and a lie. Our host will guess which is the lie. We'll find out the answer together at the end of the conversation. But our host will have an opportunity to change their answer based on what they learn from our guest. Or they can stick with their first intuition.
Eric, thank you so much for joining me on our podcast.
I am humbled and honored.
It's fun because I know you a little bit. Obviously, I think a lot of people know you through all of the panels and talks and your books and your newsletter, which I'm an avid reader of. But we actually have had a chance to touch base as business owners, as both fellow founders of independent production houses. And I just loved that conversation so much. I was like, oh, if I have a chance to talk to him again, I'm going to do it. But I'm a little nervous because I don't know you well enough to guess what the answers to these things are going to be. So let's see. Are you ready for this 2 truths and a lie game?
I think I am. Should I fire?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Statement number 1 is I once recorded an interview mid-air on the Goodyear blimp. Statement number 2, the first time I ever appeared on NPR's All Things Considered, I was with 200 high school cheerleaders and me.
Oh my God. That's a very specific, if that's made up. Okay, go ahead.
And it is, see how fast you are Googling. And the third statement is I have a very large collection of EVP recordings, which stands for electronic voice phenomenon, which is the sound of capturing ghosts on tape.
Oh, wow, you're good. You really wanted to trick me, didn't you?
Yeah, I tested these on my wife, and she's like, no one's ever going to be able to guess this.
Yeah. Okay, that it's just going to be basically a guess. But I'm going to guess that the first one is the lie. But you're not allowed to reveal. We're going to reveal it at the end for our audience. They can. I doubt my questions are going to reveal these answers. I'm just going to put that out there. But who knows? We'll see. Let's get to the heart of it. So now I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You're only going to have 60 seconds. This is the hardest part, is you're only going to have 60 seconds to answer each of them. And after that, we're going to pick one of the subjects we covered to explore it more deeply so you can elaborate some thoughts that you might want to share. This was so hard to prepare for, Eric, because I want to talk to you about so many things. And I feel like you've gotten all the questions under the sun. You get to talk about so many things. So I'm going to do my best. I hope that these are interesting to you.
I'm sure they will.
But anyway, here we go. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here we go. Question 1. Business owner to business owner, founder to founder. Okay, this year sucked. And it's not even over yet. And I'm like, I was hoping for like a change that I'm no longer waiting for. I'm just kind of now hunkering down just to make it to 2024. Who knows what's going to happen in Q4. So what's interesting, I've been reading your newsletter, The Audio Insurgent. Everybody should go sign up right now. It's really, really good. And you've talked a lot about the industry at large, 2023, yeah, it's a bad year, but we've had bad years, and sort of what is up for the industry. But I want to hear your perspective as a business owner. What has this been like for you as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a person who manages people, who has to take care of jobs? Help me feel less alone. And I guess the timer's about to start.
It's a great question. I would say that it's very easy to make predictions about an industry it is much harder to see things up close. And one of the things I tell people makes me a good consultant is I don't have the perspective of being in it every day. I see it very clearly from the outside. And I think that it's been a scary year. I think that's the best way to describe it because there's been so much unknown, so much shifting. It reminds me a lot of the first year of the pandemic when actually that was scarier to me than this. We saw this coming. We know this has been coming for a while, so we kind of planned for it. And I think the first half of 2023 was dealing with the reality of, yes, this is the case scenario maybe not worst case, but pretty much worst case scenario we thought was coming. And the second half of 2023, knock on wood, has been grateful that we listened to ourselves and feeling much more calm and focused now because we made the choices we did before.
Awesome. I'm so glad. We're here. We are. We're still standing. Magnificent Noise is still around. Adonde is still around. Hopefully things start turning around. And I'm with you. I've seen things shift, which is really, really promising. I just can't tell how
and
fast.
It's not like the bad is over.
Right.
We're like smooth sailing, but that feeling of like, where is the bottom of this doesn't seem to be occupied as much of my thoughts.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I really think of you as like just a person who has just seen it all. And we both come from public radio backgrounds. And so we both have like this service-oriented approach to our jobs, even though we are in the for-profit world now. And I love reading your newsletter because you just say so many of the things that are true to the way I want to lead and I want to run my business, which is...
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So my second question goes to something you brought up in, I think, the last dispatch, which was about making exquisite things and just being super detail oriented and in service of your listener. And I just loved it so much. And you cited this scene from the TV show Bear, the Bear. I've been wanting to get into it, but I haven't gotten into season 2 yet. But
season 2 is the reason to watch it.
Season that's 1 what everybody says.
Is good.
Okay, I got to get into it.
Season 2 is transcendent television. I told someone that the only reason to watch season 1 is to get to season 2.
Okay, that's it. I'm convinced. Got to go back. But as I was reading it, I'll be honest, I was like, who pays for that? Like, I wish I had the time to do that exquisite work. So my question, is there a business model for making that exquisite work? And what would you say to builders who have that farmer voice in them that wish that they could make it, but make it without going broke?
That's a great question. And I think in order to answer it, you have to accept that there are multiple definitions of exquisite. Exquisite can mean with custom sound design and scoring. Every interview, you spend 5 hours editing every single section of something, and it just takes weeks and weeks and weeks of work. I am a subscriber to the belief that you can set standards in all kinds of ways. And that even if you're doing a simple 2-way that you're knocking out for a weekly show and you've got just a couple hours to work on that episode, you can still devote yourself to like, I have this number of hours to work on this conversation to get this episode out. And I'm going to make every second count. I'm going to make every moment important. I'm going to make sure everything that if I have 4 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours or a day or whatever it is, that I'm going to make the most of that thing. I'm going to get done more in that day than anybody else would think possible. And if you set that as your mark, then you're still able to exceed your expectations and everyone else's too.
Okay, final question.
Podcast 360 will be right back after a quick break and a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Podcast 360.
Given that you get to talk a lot about the industry, that people ask you a lot of questions, you really, I love that you have found time in your schedule. I really don't know how you do it, but time to write the audio insurgent for all of us, but also for yourself, because it's so great that you've set this bar for yourself to really be on top of and thinking a lot about what's happening, that I wanted to use this question to turn the table around and ask you, what is something that you think you don't get asked enough or that you don't get to talk about enough? And if you don't have an answer to that, I have another leading topic because I can tell you what I would say if you can't think of anything.
I want to hear what you would say. What I don't get asked enough is... This is an honest answer because it really does impact everything. It's rarely when I'm consulting with companies, they want to talk about their portfolio. They want to talk about their audience. They want to talk about engagement. They want to talk about the business of what they're doing or how to reverse engineer business into the decisions they're making as to what to do and what not to do. Rarely do I get conversations about what I think is the most important thing, which is something you just alluded to, which is the importance of being a good leader. Like, how can we be a good leader to this group of people? We just hired all these people to make podcasts for us. We've engaged all these contractors or all these companies. How can I be a good leader to these people? And I don't know if I necessarily have I don't have as easy as an answer I would about CPM rates or portfolio theory, but there's a lot to being a good leader that gets really ignored. And I think that many organizations suffer deeply because of that lack of emphasis on training people how to be leaders.
Amen. It's actually kind of in line with what I was going to say something about work-life balance. I think we don't talk enough about how we're going to create environments for our teams that they're going to love showing up at work and love shutting off and leading good, healthy lives so that we don't burn out.
I both Jesse and I are terrible role models for that.
Oh, no.
But we're pretty insistent on our teams that they do have that. I take a lot of exception when I hear people describing work as a family. I think it's a terrible thing.
Same.
And I think it's just used as a kind of a cloak or cover for making people accept work terms that are not in their best interests.
Yeah, you have a family.
Right.
It's not. It's at home.
It's awfully dysfunctional, right? But I do think of this more like a team.
Yeah,
and I don't use that term lightly. I mean, people get on a team because of their talent. They stay on a team because of their talent. You make an investment into getting their top performance, which is everything from training them with the brightest minds to giving them a back rub, not you giving them a back rub, but them giving them a back rub, to just like taking care of them as a person. And that's how you get the ideal performance out of that person. And thinking of a team as a literal team, and you cast roles and you think what these people support and you give it to them. And you've included that in your calculus as to how to make things as, we need to have, this kind of team building exercise, or I need to buy some training for people, or I need to spend some of my time with teaching someone that they could probably learn on their own. And there was a time in my life where I was very much like, hey, Pro Tools, get a license on Friday, come back on Monday, you're going to know how to use it. And that's not the world I want to occupy anymore.
Right.
Of I can teach them because I had to struggle through that. And I definitely don't expect them to spend their weekend learning how to do a work skill. So yeah, I don't know where we started, but that's where we landed.
I think it goes to the heart of what you said about being a leader,
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. I mean, it gets to the heart of culture, work culture. Mm-hmm. What kind of culture do you want to have at your company? How are you going to make sure people are going to want to keep working for you?
Here we go.
Okay, I doubt we have time to dig into any other topics because we just dug into a bunch of them. So let's get to the answer of the 2 truths and a lie. Let's see if I am going to change my answer. Let me think. Okay, let's recap.
So real quickly, recap. One is I recorded an interview midair on the Goodyear blimp. The second one was the first time I was on NPR's All Things Considered was me and a group of 200 high school cheerleaders. And the third one is I have a large collection of EVP recordings, which is the sounds of ghosts captured on a recording.
Okay, I'm changing my answer. I'm going with the cheerleaders. I feel like that's the lie.
Is that your final answer?
It's my final answer, but I know that you said that because it's not true. But it's fine. I'm going to stick with it. I feel like I can't. I don't know why, but for some reason I can't imagine that moment. But I feel like you would have these weird ass recordings. Like that just sounds like something you would do because I think you love audio and weird things. And then the Goodyear blimp. I mean, I originally said the Goodyear blimp one, but because it's like that. What is that? What interview would that be? But yeah. Let me stick with cheerleaders.
Okay, so I will tell you that my beginning of my radio career was at a station in Kent, Ohio, which is next to Akron, Ohio, which is the headquarters or historic headquarters of Goodyear Tire and Rubber, where my grandparents met. And so I rode on the Goodyear blimp and recorded it and conducted an interview up there because during a fun drive, my radio station gave away a ride on the blimp. And I said, well, if we're going to give away a ride on the blimp, I have to go on the blimp and ask people what it's like to ride on the blimp.
Of course.
It's much louder than you think it is. The second thing is if you go to Google right now and you Google Eric Nuzum NPR cheerleader camp, you will find a piece I did in 2004.
No way.
Where when I worked at this radio station, I think it was 2004, 2002 or something before the end of 2004 when I went to NPR. I had an office in the radio station, and across the parking lot was a bunch of dormitories at Kent State University. And during the summer, they held cheerleader camps there, and they were cheerleading over the hill, hundreds of them. And my window was open, and I could hear them all day cheering. And so one day I grabbed a recorder and a shotgun mic, and I went over the hill, and I walked over the hill, and there's hundreds of cheerleaders, and they all stopped cheering and looked at me. And I said, "Hi, I'm Eric from the radio station across the street. Could I just record you doing cheers?"
Oh,
and so they did a bunch of cheers for me.
It's the best
including
audio.
cheering my name, which was fucking awesome. And the third is the lie. Actually, the EVP recordings is a lie because I but barely.
You don't believe in ghosts?
Well, I wrote a book I've written 4 books, and I wrote one that was half memoir and half of when I was a freshman in college, and half of me searching the country for evidence of ghosts.
Oh, wow. So it's not, it wouldn't have been weird for me to have believed that.
It wouldn't have been weird because a number of people know that I've written this book. It's called Giving Up the Ghost. And it's I was deathly scared of ghosts as a child. And this series of events happened when I was a freshman that I'm not going to spoil it. But I decided that part of facing this fear was to actually go and confront it. And I went everywhere, and everywhere I went, everyone wanted to do EVP recordings. So I had a bunch of recording equipment with me, obviously, because I've recorded every interview I went on, even for my book. And hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of recording, and not a single thing.
Well, I guess people are just going to have to read your book to understand how things turned out in the non-recording land. But interesting that the audio recordings didn't prove to be fruitful. Did it make you get over your fear? Or,
oddly, yes.
Yes, it did. Okay.
Oddly, yes.
Okay.
And now
good.
every once in a while, someone will say, "Hey, we're going to go on this ghost hunt. You want to come with us?" I'm like, "Sure."
Sure,
and
why
I go
not?
along, and they get terrified, and I'm just like, "Yeah, this isn't that bad."
See, exposure therapy. It worked.
No,
it worked.
That's what it was. That was the idea behind the whole thing. Is just force yourself to get. I did it. I did an article for Washingtonian magazine, which has an Omnishoram Hotel in D.C. has a haunted ghost suite. That's actually written on the door, a plaque that says "Ghost Suite" on it. And I talked the hotel into letting me spend 2 nights there. One night I spent by myself, and the next night I brought in a ghost busting team with me, and we spent the whole night in there trying to.
I love this.
It was very.
It's like a
comical.
movie.
Yeah, it was very comical, and so on the basis of that piece I did for Washingtonian, someone offered me a book contract.
Oh,
so
I'm gonna have to go look it up. Well. Eric, thank you for sharing your time and thoughts with us and being part of Podcast 360. For our listeners, if you've enjoyed this time with Eric, look at me being so hosty. See, I go right into my host voice. I can't help it.
I'm loving it. Keep it going.
It's a second sense. Like at this point, it just goes. I go right into it. For our listeners, if you've enjoyed this time with Eric, you can find him sitting in the host chair on next week's episode, where he'll get the chance to interview another founder. Eric, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you, your company, your projects, or any other shout outs you'd like to give?
Well, my company's at magnificentnoise.com. I'm at ericnuzum.com, Nuzum. And my newsletter, which you were so kind to talk about in the beginning, is a great way to kind of follow along with what I'm doing in the world. And that's at audioinsurgent.com.
Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you for listening to Podcast 360, where you experience a 360-degree view of podcasting. Special thanks to the Podcast Academy and DCP Entertainment. Follow us on social media at The Ambies and at DCP Official on Instagram. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.